Good morning and welcome to our live webinar, How to Stay Cyber Aware While Working from Home with Tyler Technologies. My name is Andrea Chim and I am the Events and Communications Coordinator at the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We are very excited to partner with Tyler Technologies to offer you some helpful tips and tricks for avoiding cyber attacks while you work from home. Before we jump into the program, there are a few housekeeping details. Guests are welcome to submit questions into the chat function on the right-hand side of your YouTube screen. By logging into your Google or YouTube account. If you have any questions after the program concludes, you can send them directly to our presenter, Max, at Greene, Greene at tylertech.com. And with that, I will turn things over to Max to begin the program.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you all so much for joining me. As stated, I am part of the Tyler Technologies Tyler Cybersecurity team. My role with the team is that of Cyber Awareness Consultant. I've worn many different hats under this role, everything from being an IT person to an electrician to an exterminator to a nurse to an elderly woman, hello, and everything in between. As part of my job has been conducting social engineering engagements and acting and thinking like the cyber criminal in order to prepare us, but also studying the tactics of the cyber criminal to provide end user training like we're doing today. So jumping right in, our agenda, we're going to start with the new normal. What are we dealing with? Why are we here today? Who are we dealing with? What threats do we need to be aware of? And then how do we adapt and prepare? We'll talk about the best practices. And again, as stated, please feel free to put questions into the chat and we will address them at the end. So the new normal for us is social distancing in our current predicament. And for most of us, that means working from home. The hope for all of us is that we have this idyllic, amazing work from home setup where now we just wake up and we have our coffee and we're good to go. But the realistic and true thing for most is that it looks a lot more like this. There's kids, it's chaotic. Maybe there's roommates or spouses. You guys are all vying for the best spot to work from home. And then just the general world distractions, the panic, the fear, the uncertainty, and also just the fact that we're not used to simply being at home without our help desk, looking over our shoulder or someone to ask questions. We are now very independent in how we are navigating our job roles and what we're actually doing on our workstations, on our computers, and how we're browsing cyberspace. The really important thing to get into before we get too far is really understanding that the internet environment is a shared resource, and securing it really is our shared responsibility. There is no one individual business or government entity that is solely responsible for securing it, and every single one of us, through our individual actions, have a collective impact. And our goal today is to really educate and advocate for everyone to become cyber warriors in their own right, because we are both simultaneously all of our organizations' first line of defense, but also the weakest link. Any amount of technology that we can throw to protect ourselves can be undone with the push of a button or with the lack of mindfulness by the end user. So now that we know that, who are we dealing with? Right, we kind of conjure up all these different thoughts when we think of who our cyber criminal is. And it could be everything from cyber terrorism to your basic cyber criminal, to your hacker, right? And they're all anonymous and they're somewhere out in the dark web. Or maybe we're thinking of this guy, sexy mullet dude down in mom's basement. You give him enough Red Bull and Cheetos, he's gonna type faster than the other guy and hack the CIA or the FBI. And, individuals can be doing these actions, but for the most part, what's actually happening is this: malware by service, ransomware by service, full-on organizations in third world countries that aren't that much different from our everyday workplaces, and maybe they're all working from home and doing this remotely now, but they have 24-hour customer service, and you can call them up and buy malware from them, and then the average cyber criminal takes it from there, and they'll conduct a phishing campaign or the other things we're going to get into. But it's gotten sophisticated enough that this is what we're up against: a full-time industry making sure that there's malware out there. So, but what are we worried about, especially in terms of us working from home? And that really becomes social engineering, which is the method that the cyber criminals are using to get us. And we see these methods here, everything from email phishing, so posing as a legitimate business or service, and almost everyone is familiar with email phishing. We'll touch upon that briefly, just a couple key little tricks to recognize. Vendor spoofing, so posing as a vendor, on a service call, whether it be in person or on the phone or via email. ITIS spoofing, posing as an internal IT RIS department staff, information security department staff, especially for those folks that do have smaller businesses and maybe aren't familiar with their IT folks because it's outsourced, or for that matter, larger businesses, people that haven't taken time to get to know their IT staff, so they can't. Someone like myself could call in and simply say, "Hi, this is Dave from the help desk, and we're calling about such and such issue." Website spoofing, so the creating of phony websites. We've been seeing a lot of World Health Organization and CDC fake websites go up recently. Phone spoofing, and this is the ability to make the caller ID appear as to whatever the caller wants you to see. So essentially, I could call in and it would appear on your caller ID as your mother calling. Hopefully you would recognize that I'm not your mom on the phone, but we have that kind of power, right? The caller ID was invented so that we could trust inherently who was calling us, and we didn't have to worry about those types of scams. And unfortunately, the bad actors have taken that away, flipped it back around, and can now pose as whoever they want. And then charity scamming. Charity scamming is really on the rise, and this is for looking for financial support for fake charities. And especially now during COVID-19, and as we all do look out for each other and care about our communities and our nation and that alike, people are really taking advantage more than ever. And I can't stress this enough. So if you do get, we'll touch upon what happens if you get emails. There are, many resources to find out if a charity is legitimate. That said, you could still get an email using a legitimate charity, but sending you elsewhere. And we'll touch on what you do then momentarily. So pretty much goes without saying, but phishing and scams are absolutely on the rise. I read a figure that phishing alone was up 60% by the end of March. Because again, more than ever, the cyber criminals are going to use the fear and the stress and the uncertainty against us. This email here is one from Netflix. This was one of the most popular phishing emails of last year, still as prevalent now, especially with all of the working from home. What would we do without our streaming ability, our Netflix, our Hulu, etc.? But it also just, it makes a point across the board, which is if you get an email like this, so, again, it's supposed to look like it's from Netflix, your account has been suspended. Of course, they messed up by saying dear Netflix and not dear user or whoever we are. But we're sending you this email to let you know that your credit card has been expired. To update your account information, please visit your account. And it wants you to click there, and it will send you to, again, another faux page that looks like you're at Netflix and prompts you to put in your credit card information. Now, if you hovered over this link, pretty much without a doubt, it would tell you that you're going nowhere near Netflix. Again, that's not clicking on it, but hovering over it. So it shows where you're about to launch off to. So that would be a key. Plenty of clues here, but not just Netflix. Any type of account-based email, text message, anything that's talking about something that you have a way to log into physically always do that. Never follow the email prompting you to go to that account, because even if it's a legitimate warning, we can still go to our account to know if it's real, or reach out directly to the people managing our account. And this goes for our bank accounts, our other email accounts, our social media accounts, what have you. Do not click on the link embedded in it, especially if you haven't done anything that should have engaged this process. Other types of, just again, really common and on the rise phishing currently, we're seeing a lot of DocuSign, fake DocuSign with, here are the updated coronavirus guidelines. Please log in. It prompts you as if you were putting in your work credentials, simply so they can just harvest those credentials and log in as you down the line. I put this out here again, just because it's marked up like my third grade paper. So even though we've all reviewed phishing so much, it's just a great, we can really see what we need to be looking for. So of course, this email looks like it's from Bank of America, but if we look closely, the sender is really crvdgi@comcast.net, which is pretty strange. It also is being sent to undisclosed recipients, so not specific to us. It's probably us and a million other blind seed people on this email. Excuse me. And then we're replying to that Comcast.net. We're not replying to Bank of America. Of course, there's a few grammatical issues here. There's always those types of clues, but they are getting more sophisticated always. But then, they have the actual go to bankofamerica.com. And I've just told you, well, always go visit that actual account. Again, though, don't want to do it via the email, because even though they've used the actual URL, this is just how they're having it appear. Where you're actually being sent to, if you were to click on this link, is to this address, going nowhere near bankofamerica.com. And if you hovered over, before clicking, you would see that. So all types of things we just need to be aware of and practice. It really comes down to mindfulness and taking the extra second, really, for almost all of these things. I put this up here because this is just a great free resource. It is a phishing quiz that was created by Google. It's 8 questions. If you follow a lot of the rules and things we'll talk about today, you should get 100 on it, 8 out of 8. But it's just great practice for yourselves, for your kids, for your parents, for your fellow coworkers, just so you really get in the habit of recognizing a phishing versus legitimate email. So I would implore you to go out and take that when this is over. This is an example of a spoofed website. Now, I give these types of trainings live a lot of the time, and I'll say to the crowd, where are we right now? And people take a second and then pretty confidently will say we're at 5starmanager.com, which is accurate, right? But the intent, of course, is to make it look like we're at chase.com. We have the Chase logo, chase.com up here, even in the URL. Embedded in the middle, we have chaseonline.chase.com. Of course, these are just folder names and could have said anything, and they're just there to confuse us. And there's other clues that we're not at chase.com. It's a financial site, and it doesn't have a certificate. There's no HTTPS. There's no lock in the corner. So tons of things to tip us off there, certainly. That said, a really important rule that we should all remember, which we're going to learn now, is to always look for the first / in any address, web address, and then go 2 dots back. So we would find our first / after .com, and then we go 2 dots back, and that's going to tell us, again, we are at 5starmanager.com. Everything after that doesn't matter. Everything before it doesn't matter. I stress that because a very common tactic in social engineering from a cyber criminal is to plug the name of an organization or your organization or a legitimate organization in front of the web address. So like it is here, where it says tylertech.vsgcloud.com/test. Really, we're only at vsgcloud.com, right? Because we're following our rule, first / 2 dots back. If you look for that and follow that rule, that can save you honestly almost all of the time, and when you're uncertain about a link or where you actually are. This is just illustrating it one more time, just so making sure that it's getting across, looking for that first forward slash and 2 dots back. So here we know we're at airlineaamembers.com. Another important thing, as always, be aware of any attachments you receive or download via email, as these attachments, if malicious, can bring down malware or unwanted software onto your device. Everything from a keylogger to ransomware. Ransomware being a type of malware that will encrypt all of your files and then hold them for ransom. It's been honestly one of the biggest cyber issues in the past year, and is on the rise. So all of these types of things are prevalent. So we really do, especially if it's not your normal job function or you haven't initiated it, or you're not expecting an attachment, be wary, contact your help desk if you're unsure, do a scan of the attachment, just delete it outright if you really aren't comfortable. That's really always going to be the best move. If it's from someone that you know, reach out on the phone, pick up the phone, find a different way to communicate and say, did you mean to send this to me? Is this legit? Should I be expecting this? Do your due diligence though. All right, so that's phishing and web spoofing and important points, but that's not where it stops. So more work from home, targeted fraud. Social media. I mean, social media is really always a honeypot of, for fraud. There's fraud, it's rampant, but especially now in terms of social distancing and working from home, and in an effort to stay communicated and connected to our coworkers and our community, it's really important in how we navigate our social media platforms. For starters, we want to be mindful about where we're clicking, especially as all of our smart devices listen to us more and more, and our news feeds are tailored to us. That really awesome sweatshirt that that advertisement might be legitimate and have been vetted, but once you click on that advertisement, where are you going? Are you now on some Chinese website that is going to harvest your credit card information? How do we know that where you've clicked to is safe? Or when you receive messages from people you don't know, think to yourself, why would I click on this? Why would I open this? Just because it's in a social media browser does not mean it's safe, and it still has the same power that a phishing email would. Be skeptical of friend requests, especially if you already have this person as a friend. That's not to say that people don't have multiple social media accounts, but again, commonly what's actually happening is people aren't managing their security and privacy settings. So it is possible for people to go out, see your basic profile, see who your friends are, create a profile as if they are you, and then friend your friends for malicious purposes. So be wary of that. Understand how your information is shared and your identity used. Always important. Not that many of us read those user agreements, but because of that, be careful that we're not just flooding our social media with pertinent information, especially about our organizations. Don't put your whole life out there. One thing that really kind of shined out there for me throughout all of this has been the pictures of people's work from home setups, which is great, and everyone wants to share that. But right off the bat, you're telling, if you aren't managing your social well, you're basically telling the cyber criminals of the world, hey, this is where I am. These are the types of devices I'm on, and really just and this is the exact location. If those location services are on, especially for photographs, which most of the time they are unwittingly. And we're just giving out so much information that can and will be used against us. You want to change those passwords at least twice per year. And then lastly, close accounts you don't use. If you found love on Tinder, don't leave it open just in case. If you no longer use your Facebook, delete your Facebook, Instagram, whatever, because for the same reason of when people simply make a faux profile as you, if they're able to get access to a profile that you're not monitoring, we don't know what kind of dangers that can open up our community to, our friends to, our employees, our coworkers, etc. So be mindful of all of those things. Text message fraud. This is probably going to outdo email phishing, to be honest, as we now all roll around with our computers in our pockets. And it's difficult because we're seeing now, especially very much Corona targeted text messages. This one was really aggressive really early on. Coronavirus outbreak in the US confirmed. Each person has one protection dosage. Click here to get that. I personally have gotten, before the stimulus went out, tons of, click here to get double stimulus or get your stimulus, or click here to make money buying Amazon stuff, or whatever it is. And of course, some of them are recognizable as fraud, but, maybe not for all of us, and maybe not for our kids, and maybe not for our parents or our grandparents. And so we need to do a good job at, not only getting educated ourselves, but educating each other. The other thing is some aren't so blatant, and some do look like they are coming from our financial institutions or a legitimate account that we would potentially get a fraud alert from, which again, similar to the Netflix situation, we never want to click on a link within that text. Always just call that account specifically if you are concerned. People often ask me, what can we do in these situations if we get a smishing message, a text message fraud, spam, what do we do in this situation? Well, you can text 7726, which will get sent to all of the major phone carriers. They're able to flag these messages. Or you can file a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission or the Federal Communications Commission. And you can do that with the links below there. The power of the spoof, really can't stress that enough. I personally have called countless organizations, again, testing them, but pretending to be an account holder for a bank or a customer, and changed my account details. Calling it as a patient, calling it. There are people in Florida that still think I'm Dave from the help desk, all because when I call them, I'm able to make my number appear as if I'm a legitimate person or a legitimate source. Again, we need to be wary of this all the time. We can't just rely on caller ID. That is not something we can do moving forward, unfortunately. That said, many of us have probably even gotten calls from our own phone number, right? And that's a really stressful moment too. What if this is your back to the future moment and you're calling to warn yourself about 2020? Well, tell yourself you're going to leave yourself a message, right? We can't kind of fall into these tricks that these scammers are doing to pique our curiosity or get us to answer the call. Because even answering some of these calls, and maybe they're not even spoofed, maybe you're just getting scam calls. A lot of the time, if you do answer the call, what it'll do is it'll just stay open and it'll just charge you for that call. So there's a ton of different kind of phone scams out there currently. You can silence unknown numbers, which is a good way to kind of vet those and hope that there's a voicemail. You can't really block spoofed calls because it's just not possible, and because they're posing and using a third party to pose a legitimate number. But again, just be wary as you receive those communications. So how do we pivot? What are the best practices and staying secure? Verify who you're speaking to, right? So again, in case, really all the time, especially if we're working with clients and customers, we are working with our help desk or our IT folks, make sure that you're actually speaking to those people, verify those users. Are we using, security questions that make sense? As we know that kind of our old guard of security questions of mother's maiden name and birth date and address really are just very public pieces of information these days. So how are we improving those processes? How are we navigating kind of the divide between customer service and security? We kind of all need to get to a place where we feel safe enough to challenge the person on the phone, to verify who we're speaking to, because we do come from a customer service driven society where customer service is king and you just want to be helpful and give the answers, and that's how, and it's how we want to be dealt with as well. But if questions are being asked of you, be thankful for that, for the people doing it, and then do it in turn, because you're not only protecting your organizations, between reputation and data loss, etc., but also we're protecting our clients, we're protecting our community, and in turn our national infrastructure. Another important piece with this is when we're not sure who we're speaking to, understanding that there's no such thing as innocuous information, right? Think about it as puzzle pieces. If someone is trying to go through this process of calling and getting information, it isn't necessarily going to be done in one call. And any information you give up without verifying could be used to further build the profile, even yes or no questions. It's really hard for us to, as humans, to not let people know when we know they're trying to fool us. So if someone calls in and says, "Hey, I'm working with IT and we're trying to deal with that Internet Explorer issue," and you do something like, "Well, I'm only on Safari and we don't deal with that ever," click, like you've only just given them another piece of information moving forward. So all of these things are something to think about. And then if you are, an IT company, or you're a company that needs to reach out regularly, think about, instituting something like a code word that your clients will know ahead of time, or a multi-factor code, or something that you can work out to verify each other without a doubt. And this way, everyone's safe across the board. Some key things here: can I call you back? Do I know who I'm speaking to? Did I initiate this, and am I expecting this? If you ask yourselves these questions, or you follow these types of, you follow these prompts, can I call you back? That's going to stop almost any phone pretexting thing in its tracks, right? Because again, even if they're spoofing the number, they don't own the number. So if you look up the legitimate number, or you have a number on file that you trust, and you call that number back, you're either going to reach the person you were speaking to, or you'll reach someone completely different, and you'll know that you were being scammed. Again, asking, do I know who I'm speaking to? What kind of questions you can ask them? Am I really familiar with this person? Did I initiate this? Why are they calling me? Why am I getting this email? Am I expecting this? Same thing. Passwords and multi-factor, really, always important, and now more important than ever, as we are in our homes trying to protect our personal machines, that we're now, connecting to our workplaces. We're bringing so much more under our roof. So we need to make sure we're doing the right things in protecting our data. Multi-factor. So multi-factor, for those that aren't aware, is having that initial code, that additional code sent to you after putting in your credentials. So if you log into your email and you put your username and your password, you would then be texted, or through another app, sent a code that says, "Hey, this is really you." Of course, this can be frustrating or annoying, especially if you set it up for everything, which I really hope that everyone does, everything from their online banking to their emails to their social media. When you have your phone in the kitchen and your computer is in the living room, and now you have to walk all the way to get your phone. Security is annoying, but it will make the difference, because these cyber criminals are opportunistic, and it's really the difference between an unlocked car and a locked car. That the cyber criminal is more likely to move on than to try to, smash the window and steal your Ray-Bans and your car stereo, right? So multi-factor is so important. Passwords, we look for 15 characters long with numbers and special characters, or converted phrase, 10 characters long with upper and lower case or special characters. We do want to avoid ambiguous characteristics like $ and password, because it really is just still password. We want to avoid names and patterns and sequences. If you tweet about the fact they're going on, work from home walks with your dog Polly every day, don't make every password Polly123. Try to get away. If you're required to change your password on your, computers through work every 90 days, don't do the typical season and year. I'm sure many of us have spring 2020 right now, with plans on changing it to summer 2020. But we want to stop. We want to get better than that. And we don't want to use the same password at multiple sites where we have protected or sensitive information. And that's simply because then if we're burned one place, we've been burned everywhere. There's now no protection for any other thing. So what I tell people, when they're stressed about this, because nobody likes to try to have to remember all these really complex passwords, use a password manager. Dashlane or LastPass are examples. Do your research, whatever works best for you or for your organization. But a lot of these will store these complex passwords or generate them each time, allowing you to just need the password to your password manager. I am going a little over time, so I'm going to go quickly, and I apologize, but we'll keep going here. Acceptable use: use your work computers, and use your computers the way you would use them at work, especially now. Many of us are, a lot more click happy at home. We have kids that are click happy, but important to know that it can be as simple as just visiting a site to have malware brought down. And this is known as drive-by download attacks. So we really do want to be wary of where we're going. Multifactor, just stressing it one more time, enable it. It really is just a game changer. It will make sure that people can't, steal your email and use it for their purposes, your bank account information, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we want to make sure we never share that multi-factor authentication code. One big thing that is currently happening is criminals will actually initiate the lockout password process, or they'll have the first step credentials, and then they'll reach out. They'll spoof the call and they'll say, hey, we're calling from Chase Bank. We've seen some fraud alert. You should have just received a code from us. Can you please read it to us? In that situation, do not ever do that. That is them phishing for your authentication code. If you receive the multi-factor code and you haven't initiated that process, contact the help desk and update that password immediately. Video conferencing. This has also become the new norm, as we do try to have some semblance of connection and see each other, throughout our weeks, and have these meetings that we are typically used to having. But especially if you're using something like Zoom and you don't have an in-house video conferencing option, there's a lot out there. GoToMeeting, WebEx, that have been vetted, that are very secure. That if you don't, if you are having these meetings all the time and talking about client data and sharing presentations, it might make sense to invest in that type of licensing. Or if you are using Zoom or some of the free mediums, really just make sure you're setting passwords for these online meetings. Be wary of where you're sharing, where the login information is. Set individual meet times. So don't just, open one conference line and have it open all day, because people, are trying to guess at those or just kind of drop into video conferences. And then double check invitation lists, make sure you're inviting the right people. That, it's just so much more difficult when we're doing things we're not used to and we're at home and we're navigating, video conferencing and things that aren't part of our everyday, and so we really do need to just take that extra minute and mindful use to protect ourselves if these are routes we're going to use. Ensure that you have antivirus and the latest updates. If you're a Spectrum internet customer, which I know most of us here in Maine are, at least, you can download McAfee Security Suite for free for up to 3 devices. And this gives you really a bunch of capabilities, everything from spam blocking to the antivirus that we want, to firewall options so we can whitelist and blacklist certain websites, to parental controls. So really a tremendous service, and I would encourage anyone to reach out to Spectrum if you want to find more, or go online to make sure that you're utilizing this. We also want to make sure, in terms of acceptable use, locking down our home Wi-Fi. So change the default name for your home Wi-Fi from Spectrum 57 to something specific to you. Make your wireless network password unique and strong. We say that all the time, could not mean that more in this situation. Enable network encryption. It will give you a couple drop-down options when setting that up. Turn off network name broadcasting. This will make it so that your neighbors aren't seeing your Wi-Fi or anyone around you, and only you or the people within your household will have access to it. Keep your router software up to date. That should happen automatically, but make sure you're following up with that. Make sure that is true. Make sure you have a good firewall. So again, utilizing something like the McAfee Suite, or using VPNs, virtual private network, which really makes it so that as we all work from home, we're able to connect back to our networks within our workplaces that are secured private networks. You need to work with your IT staff to figure out what type of VPN client you need to bring down and how you can connect back to your specific environment. But this really makes it so that all of our browsing and communication being sent is now being housed on that private network. All of the tools that we typically are using to monitor things that are happening on our network will now be in play. So absolutely utilize that if you can. Make sure you're keeping a clean desk in terms of client information or any type of work information. We want to make sure these things aren't getting swept up with life, especially as this all ends and we all do re-enter the world. So many of us have confidential shred bins at our workplace, but we want to really make sure we're still following those same kind of basic guidelines at home, and have a dedicated bin with plans of shredding that and then bringing in the confidential destruction bins when we can. Procedures and policies. Make sure you know your procedures and policies. What is expected from you in terms of working from home? What are safe sites to be using? What can we use in terms of communicating about client information or internal information? Where do I access my procedures and policies? And then also understand that these should be living documents, right? That as we navigate the unknown and we work on, what it means to work from home, adding to these procedures and policies of, when we do a video conference meeting, it's going to be done on this platform, and these are the requirements. And these websites should not be visited, when using a work machine in your home environment, whatever it is. But make sure that these are available and constantly being updated to reflect our current situations. Report anything to the IT and help desk. Don't be the person that clicks on the phishing email and then just slams your computer shut and says, "Oh, I'm not telling anyone about that." Get ahead of it. We're all going to make those mistakes. That is why social engineering is successful. There's psychology around it. If it hasn't happened to us, we don't know what to look for. Hopefully, we can take all of these tools and feel confident that we can make almost all of these social engineering attacks into vapor through our mindful use and through what we know to be legitimate and how we look for that. But reach out, talk to your help desk about the McAfee suite type stuff, setting up a VPN. They're there as a resource, and stay in communication with them. Training and education. All of you that are listening to this now, obviously already abiding by this, but make sure we're all still participating in trainings and we're all asking questions. And then in turn, hopefully most of us can become trainers and educators from what we take from these sessions and these lessons. And lastly, always be mindful. As a society, it does take us a long time to catch up to what makes us secure. Cyber is, newer than we give it credit for, and these cyber criminals are always up in the ante. So we need to do our part as users and stay mindful and be aware. And again, taking our time, and it really should curb most of the danger that we're in. So thank you so much for attending. Again, my name is Max Greene, cyber awareness consultant for Tower Technologies. That's my email there, max.greene@towertech.com. Please reach out individually with questions through Andrea, through whomever. We are here to help. Even if it's just a small question, we're all in this together, and this is just what we feel we can do for our community currently, but we want to be there as a lifeline for you. So reach out if you need anything. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Max. Well, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I don't think we have any questions from the audience, so we'll kind of wrap this up pretty quickly. But thank you for sharing your knowledge and taking the time today to be with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. I want to remind folks that if they'd like to stay up to date on all the Chamber virtual events, you can do so by subscribing to the Chamber's email list and following us on our social media platforms. Max left his contact information there as well, but you will also receive a follow-up email after the program concludes with all this information and a replay of this video as well. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to kind of add, Max, before we sign off today for everyone?
No, other than, just try to treat your environment like it's your workplace, despite the fact that it's not. And again, do your individual research, and really don't be afraid to ask questions or to reach out for any help.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.